Picture this. You're a king who's got absolute power, but your kingdom is falling apart. The debt is skyrocketing and there's no one to help you repay it. You might well want to increase your taxes, but your peasants are already struggling financially, your nobles and clergymen categorically refuse to pay, while the bourgeois are furious that their category is the only one that pays. In short, each society group, called estate, disagrees with each other. So as a king, you might think that you are in times of crisis, that times are hard. But at no time you would imagine that crisis would explode into revolution. It is 1789 in the old French monarchy. Chapter 2: The Politician's Revolution. Section 1: The Call for Help. To stabilize the budget, King Louis XVI had to come to an agreement between his subjects. Therefore, he unwillingly accepted to gather representatives of the three estates, nobles, clergymen, and the rest called the Third Estate. And then those representatives would have to vote for measures. This kind of temporary parliament was named the Estates General.
Convene the Estates General? What next? As if my majesty weren't able to take the decisions.
But the king and the bumpkins have got too much power. But now, we nobles are finally gonna show them what we're made of.
The nobles have got too much power. But we, the Third Estate, are finally gonna make them pay taxes like us.
Still, the monarchy hadn't resorted to the Estates General for over 100 years. The king didn't know how to organize them. So he asked historians and people of knowledge for help. And he got more than he expected. Suddenly, hundreds of pamphlets, books, and newspapers exploded across the kingdom. Of course, those posts did not only deal with the organization. Actually, Louis XVI paved the way for people to criticize society and politics.
I've written the lampoon, "What is the Third Estate?" And I answered, the Third Estate is everybody. The problem is, everybody except me was pretending not to see it.
Newspapers were often read aloud in taverns and villages, so even peasants in the deepest countryside were soon aware of every flaw in French society. But then, these newspapers raised a burning question. How should the Estates General actually vote? According to tradition, the representatives' vote would be divided by estate. This meant that the nobility had one vote, the clergy had one vote, and the Third Estate one vote. Sounds fair? Not really. Imagine a law proposal. Should we raise taxes only on the Third Estate, those already paying everything, by the way? Nobility would vote, yes, of course. Clergy, yes, of course. Third Estate, no. Result? 2 votes to 1. The Third Estate, that is 96% of the population, would be instantly outvoted. Therefore, the bourgeoisie, the losers of the deal, pushed back. They demanded to double their number of representatives and to vote not by estate, but by head. 1 deputy, 1 vote. That way, they would be equal to the clergy and nobility combined, and this would have balanced debates because some clergymen and nobles might have disagreed with their own side. And in the middle of this debate, how about the king? What did he decide? Sire, do you support voting by estate or voting by head?
Excellent question. A very important question. I believe that when the time comes, well, you see, the estates are estates, and the heads are, well, they are heads. So, vote. Voila. I think it makes sense.
And I think it doesn't. What is your stance? Will you support the vote by head?
Well, I don't want to upset my nobles.
So, vote by estate.
I don't want to upset the Third Estate either.
So, vote by head.
I don't want to upset anyone. Could we maybe just not vote at all?
No vote, no budget, sire.
In this case, let's make a compromise.
And how?
As the third estate wants, I will double their deputies, but as the nobles want, I will keep the vote divided in 3.
You call it a compromise? So in practice nothing changes. 96% of the population would still be reduced to one single vote out of 3.
It is a compromise. I've heard the claims and have decided to ignore them elegantly.
Frustrated, the bourgeoisie, as well as some liberal nobles, began organizing outside the official process. They formed political clubs, early versions of political parties. One example was the Society of the Friends of the Blacks.
Monsieur, slavery in the colonies is an inhuman indignity. We must abolish it. We must abolish it to make sure the slaves will not revolt, so we can maintain our wealth overseas. We must abolish it progressively, because our goal is to make the blacks happy next to happy settlers.
These liberal clubs, all inspired by the Enlightenment and the American Revolution, were forming a new broad group, the Patriots.
Vote by hand is the only rational and fair method.
Allow me to speak as someone who fought for liberty in America. Personally, I have brought freedom to America, so shall I do to France.
Section 2. Elections and Complaints. In January 1789 came the election of representatives in the Estates General. In theory, the eligibility to vote sounded fairly open. Any man over 25 on the tax roll could vote, and even widows got a say. But in practice, the system was stacked. Because for the clergy and nobility, voting was simple. They met in local assemblies and directly chose their deputies. Quick and easy. But for the third estate, much more numerous, the process was far more complicated. In the countryside, it took 2 rounds of elections. In the towns, it took 3, which meant you would elect a delegate, who would elect another, who would finally elect a deputy reaching Versailles. The thing is, delegates were rarely small peasants, but rather wealthy bourgeois who would make sure to elect a representatives from their own group.
I've been elected deputy for the third estate. I can't wait for acting in the name of the vast majority.
Okay, but just asking, how many people are peasants in the kingdom?
Around 80%?
And how many peasants are among your deputies? The results speak for themselves. Out of 578 deputies representing the third estate, 0 were small farmers or humble craftsmen. Instead, the third estate deputies were all lawyers, jurists, large-scale landowners, businessmen, scientists, but also 10 nobles and 3 priests.
I'm a priest, but I didn't know what I was doing among those clergymen. God damn, the people around me are so boring. They're way closer to God than to their flock.
As a noble, I've jumped the third estate to represent the real people.
But why aren't you a deputy of the nobility then?
Because I've lost the nobility's elections.
Half of us are lawyers, and it's normal, as there are too many of us with so few customers. We must adapt to opportunities.
Ah, crap. Not only I failed my lawyer career, and now I have lost the elections. This is the system's fault. It has to change.
Still, besides elections, the preparation of the Estates General gave the people another tool that would turn out to be crucial: the cahier de doléances, or list of grievances, where everyone could testify what was wrong in France. Today, those documents are a gold mine for historians, especially to understand the mood in the countryside.
Okay, I'm listening. What are your demands?
Why do we get imprisoned for stealing, whereas the Lord just pays a coin for worse?
Equality in justice?
It's unfair. We pay this all taxes and he doesn't.
Equality in taxes.
And he keeps bullying us for absurd things. He wants us to pay for the old communal oven while nobody uses it.
Yeah, and the other day I wanted to look for firewood. Then, surprise, surprise, he fenced off the forest.
Abolition of feudal dues dating from the Middle Ages. Good, I'll send it to the Estates General.
Even if many of those grievances never made it to Versailles, the process itself was revolutionary. For the first time, ordinary villagers could write down their anger, compare it with their neighbors, and realize we're not alone in this. We can hope for change. Section 3. The Fall of the Estates General. May the 5th, 1789. In Versailles, the Estates General finally opened. But before the first session, something was organized. The opening ceremony with a mass to welcome the deputies. Or should I say, to welcome the deputies of the clergy and nobility. As for the rest, why should I get greetings anyway? And if there aren't enough seats, let them sit on the floor.
I don't know whether I'm a representative of the people or a piece of furniture.
After this humiliation, the deputies met in their room. And the room looked like a social pyramid. At the front, the king and his family. On each side, nobles and clergy. And the third estate was at the very back, struggling to hear the speeches.
It is a compromise. I've heard the claims.
Your Majesty, would you mind repeating? We think you said raise taxes, but at this distance, it sounded like erase taxes.
And the speeches did nothing to help. Louis XVI began with a warning.
Be moderate. Don't expect too much change.
Not exactly inspiring. But then, Finance Minister Necker took the floor.
Monsieur, I shall begin by
And this might have given back hope, because he was known for being close to the Third Estate. He had a high popularity, and patriots hoped he'd side with them against inequalities. However, in his speech, he mostly talked about the state of finances, but also about the state of finances, reminding the terrible state of finances as well, without forgetting the finance problem. And this during 3 hours. 3 hours!
to precisely 532 million livres, 14 sous, and 3 deniers. To this figure, we must add the accumulated...
I think I'm in the wrong room.
Seems like we're all in the wrong room. Are we in Versailles or in an accounting lecture?
That's scandalous. He doesn't mention inequality at all.
What did we expect? We've not been invited to reform the state. We're here to fix the king's budget and nothing else.
Well, fair enough. I'm waiting for debates to begin, so we can broach real topics.
The session is over. Now I order the 3 estates to separate from each other and discuss their votes.
Long live the king! Thus, noble and clergy deputies broke off and met in their respective rooms.
What? Separate? Doesn't mean we cannot debate with the nobles and clergy at all?
Indeed, they don't want you to.
But it will have to. Okay, monsieur, here's our strategy. We, Third Estate, will wait in this hall and refuse to work as long as the privileged ones don't agree to discuss with us about inequalities.
This political strike lasted a month. Well, it seems that your strategy didn't have much effect.
Well, I think we must act. Monsieur, we're representing 96% of the population. We are not speaking in the name of an estate, but for the whole nation. Therefore, I propose a motion claiming that we are henceforth a national assembly. We will dictate, whereas the nobles and clergy will have to join us.
2 days later, more than half of the clergy joined the new National Assembly. Enraged, the nobles urged the king to intervene.
Your Majesty, the Third Estate and clergy are plotting in the hall.
Why didn't you flood the room? They'll have nowhere to plot.
The next day, June 20th, the Assembly's usual meeting room was locked. Undeterred, the deputies marched to the tennis court. Bailly, the president of the National Assembly, pronounced an oath.
We swear never to separate ourselves from the National Assembly and to reassemble wherever circumstances require until the constitution of the realm is drawn up and fixed upon solid foundations.
Long live the nation! Almost everyone in the room swore and voted in favor of the oath. Drafting a constitution would allow them to officially establish a vote by head and hopefully to abolish privileges. It was a defiant moment. But note this, they still shouted, "Long live the king!" as they hoped the father of the nation would be on their side. He wouldn't. Instead, 3 days after, in the next gathering of the Estates General, the king returned with force.
I declare the so-called National Assembly and its schemings illegal and order the estates to work separately.
Nobles and some clergy directly obeyed and went out of the room, whereas the Third Estate refused to budge. So, the Grand Master of Ceremonies tried to recall the king's orders.
Monsieur, have you heard the king's wishes? You're ordered to leave the hall immediately.
The nation takes orders from no one.
And then I famously added, "Go and tell those who have sent you that we are here by the will of the people, and that we shall only leave under the might of bayonets."
Did you? Seems that in our archive there's no proof you did.
Between you and me, it's a legend. The fact remains that we stay here and they got rent.
They want to stay? Well, shit, let them stay.
Louis XVI had lost, and on June 27th, he gave in, ordering the nobility and clergy to join the assembly.
Seems like the king finally discovered that 96% beats one guy.
For the first time, the king's person was opposed, and the nation was represented without him. That alone was revolutionary. So it seemed to be a happy ending. The king himself had easily accepted the revolution. Or had he? Conclusion. In short, the French Revolution didn't blow up from people's revolts in the streets. It started inside the institutions themselves, led by wealthy deputies from the bourgeoisie. But for the first time, these patriot representatives succeeded in imposing themselves, and now, as a newly proclaimed National Assembly, they intended to transform the entire French political and social system. The thing is, this was far from being everyone's desire. How could King Louis XVI and his nobles keep control before this mere institutional revolution spread to the population? That's what we shall see in the next episode.